everyone, welcome to the Hindu discussion. This is 16th of March, and here we are with the first edition of the Hindu for this week. Okay, so the assembly polls begin on April 9, West Bengal to vote in two phases. Okay, so you all know that the West Bengal is going to face election this year. So the date has been announced for Bengal as well as Assam, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Puducherry. Okay, so this year you should focus on the state legislative assemblies. Okay, all those things, static things basically with respect to how the elections of the state legislative assemblies are conducted in India. What are the powers of the state legislative assemblies? The difference between the power of the discretionary power of the governor and the president. Okay, these all becomes very important. Okay, now let us jump to the editorial page. So oil prices reflect geopolitical risk, not only supply. Okay, so you all know that due to the ongoing war between Israel, US and Iran, what is happening right now is that the oil prices are increasing day by day. Okay, why? Because of the geopolitical risk, geopolitical tensions that has happened in the Middle East. Okay, and because of which one of the choke point of the oil supply has been struck or blocked by the Iran. Okay, so that is the state of Hormuz. Let us try to understand what this editorial is actually trying to make us understand. Okay, so in the aftermath of the war in West Asia, crude oil prices surged to as high as 118 dollar a barrel last week. Okay, so after the war in West Asia, what has happened is that the crude oil basically is that oil which are responsible for making diesel, petrol, okay, and so on. Okay, so that the price has increased as high as to $118 per barrel. Okay, so that is the thing. Okay, so earlier it was somewhere around 80 to 90, but now it is 118. Okay, so that is the impact you can understand. Okay, so if one for example, if there is a rise in prices of crude oil by $1, then India will lose around 1 billion dollar in a year. Okay, so you can imagine around 30 rupees sorry $30 has been increased in the crude oil price. Okay, so it means that $30 billion India can lose. Okay, India can lose in a year. Okay, if the price continues like this. Okay, so that kind of huge impact that is there. Okay, so let us see next. Alongside rising tensions, this situation has been building for over 2 months. Since mid-December 2025, when Brent crude stood at $57.56, prices have surged by more than 100%. They have, however, come down since then, but remain in three digit with no immediate sign of easing. Okay, so for the last 2.5 months, the price has been increasing. That is the sign of price increase is witnessed. Okay, historically, geopolitical shocks follow a predictable pattern. There is an immediate market overreaction that is followed by gradual stabilization as trade routes adjust. However, the global oil market is once again operating under a profound geopolitical shadow. What has changes in the development what has changed in the development now? The developments in West Asia intensifying a strategic rivalries among major powers and persistent conflict driven uncertainties have brought geopolitics back to the center of the energy discourse. Yet the nature of this influence has shifted. Unlike previously, where regional conflicts rarely removed Gulf barrels from the global pool, the current disruptions have created tangible barriers to supply, fundamentally altering the cost, confidence, and conditions of the oil trade. Okay, so earlier, whenever there was a conflict in the Middle East, what used to happen that the crude oil that was passing from the Gulf countries was not affected. Okay, affected in the sense it was not blocked effectively. Okay, but this time what has happened, you already know that due to the killing of the supreme Iranian supreme leader, the Iran in retaliation has blocked the state of Hormuz, which means that they have effectively blocked the oil supply, global oil supply. Okay, so that is why you see that there is a cost increasing, confidence is also changed, and the conditions of oil trade has also been changing. Okay, for major importing economies such as India, this shift has significant implications. Okay, so I was telling you that it has a significant implication on major importing economies such as India. Okay, oil security is no longer just about physical access. It is also defined by exposure to financial, logistical, and political uncertainty surrounding every shipment. The vulnerability of global maritime arteries is stark. Around a fifth of global oil consumption is transported through the Strait of Hormuz, and roughly a tenth of seaborne crude passes through the Bab Mandeb and Suez corridor. Okay, so why this state of Hormuz is very very important? Because of the fact that around one fifth of the global oil's consumption is transported through the state of Hormuz. Okay, around 20% of the total oil that is that is being supplied in the world. Okay, so that is coming from the state of Hormuz. Okay, and roughly a tenth of seaborne crude passes through the Babe Mandeb and Suez corridor. Okay, so these two are important. Okay, so please mark or search, try to search the location of these two. Okay, these are from this is in the Middle East, and Suez corridor in the, I think, South Africa, African continent, South American continent. Sorry. Next, the ongoing conflict involving Israel and Iran has effectively sidelined 20% of global supplies, even in the absence of planned production cuts. The market has reacted sharply to these signals. Over the past year, Brent crude has frequently fluctuated by 5 to 10% within days of military or diplomatic developments, regardless of actual production volumes. Currently, however, the impact on physical supply is so drastic that prices continue to climb without a visible peak. Tensions do more than just inflate the price of a barrel. They make maritime unsecure. Choke points remain vital arteries of trade, but their significance today lies in making global machinery vulnerable. Even limited disruptions or attacks on commercial shipping can alter vessel routing and raise freight cost. These drive of freight rates. The world has seen daily rates for super tankers more than double, affecting shipping, insurance premiums, and tighten vessel availability. Major container carriers have implemented emergency conflict surcharges or war risk surcharges. These escalations ripple through the supply chain, directly influencing landed import prices. It is about politics. Furthermore, oil has been transported from sorry, oil has been transformed from a mere commodity into a political instrument. The redirection of Russian crude oil following Ukraine conflict illustrate this dynamic. Although Russia maintained export volumes by pivoting to Asian markets, the shift introduced longer shipping routes, complex payment arrangements, and evolving compliance frameworks. What appeared stable in volume was highly volatile in operational and financial terms. For importing countries, this creates a dual exposure. Price volatility is no longer driven solely by the supply-demand balance, but by changes in geopolitical sentiment. Markets respond to diplomatic signals, military developments, and regulatory announcements with a speed that often exceeds the pace of actual trade flow. This weakens the historical relationship between production levels and the consumer prices. The growing role of financial markets amplifies geopolitical sentiment. as oil is traded not only as physical commodity but also a financial asset through futures, options and derivatives. during uh, periods of stress During periods of stress, investors use oil as both an inflation hedge and a risk sensitive instrument. Okay, so oil is also used as an inflation hedge and a risk sensitive instrument by whom? By investors. Okay, this explains why speculative positions often expand even when physical inventories are comfortable. Prices reflect expectations and portfolio behavior rather than immediate scarcity. Strategic petroleum reserves have also evolved. Originally intended to address physical supply interruptions, they are now deployed to counter psychological volatility in the market. For instance, G7 leaders have announced the release of 400 million barrels of oil in response to the war in West Asia, which is said to be about 20 days of the usual oil traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. The goal is to stabilize market sentiment as much as it is to provide physical barrels. The news of these discussions recently prompted a sale of easing Brent and West Texas immediate gains to some extent. Major powers shape this environment in different ways. The United States, now one of the world's largest producers of various petroleum products, influences markets through its strategic stock policies and diplomatic engagement with producers. Just a minute. See why I am reading everything, because if I am reading, then it will be much more clear, and then I will be making you understand as well. If anything will become very important, and that I think is not understandable without explanation. Okay, so let us jump again. So meanwhile, Asia has become the primary center of demand growth, accounting for majority of incremental oil consumption over the past decade. Okay, so the most of the oil demand is coming from Asia. Okay, Asia means both you have China, you have India. Okay, these two countries are biggest buyers of the crude oil in the world. Okay, so that is the thing. Okay, that is why you see Asia is the primary center of demand growth. Producer coordination through organizations such as Organization of Petroleum Export Countries continues to influence supply management, but its impact now interacts with geopolitical risk premium embedded in prices. The continuing relevance of oil. The energy transition adds another layer of complexity. While renewable energy and electrical mobility are expanding, oil remains central to the transport, aviation, and petrochemical sectors industries. Global oil demand is still exceed 105 million barrels per day. Okay, so how much global oil demand is there? So 100, around more than 105 million barrels per day, and petrochemicals account for a rising share of incremental consumption. This produces a segmented market, one part linked to declining fuel use, another tied to industrial growth. Thus, geopolitics continues to exert influence over a commodity whose strategic relevance is changing but not disappearing. For India, where oil demand is not expected to peak soon, uh, so so it is very important to understand. So please have attention on this. Okay, because we are going to understand about the perspective about the situation in India, current status of India. So for India, where oil demand is not expected to peak soon, is projected to drive much of global growth. This environment highlights the need of for adaptability rather than alarm. Okay, the ability to process a diverse crude grades source from multiple geographies and maintain strategic reserves provides buffers against instability. Equally crucial is building commercial and financial expertise to navigate the complex trading arrangements. Energy policy in this sense must integrate diplomacy, maritime awareness, and market analytics. This evolving structure complicates the notion of energy security. It now requires resilience not only against supply disruptions but also against financial and logistical shocks. Payment systems, shipping insurance, and contact enforcement have become integral to the energy security architecture. The broader lesson is that oil has entered a phase where risk is as significant as the resource itself. Geopolitics will continue to influence oil prices by shaping perceptions of safety, reliability, and continuity, as well as affecting the physical flow of oil. Understanding this transformation is essential for managing a vulnerable world. Stability now depends on prospective, predictable trade mechanism and avoiding diplomatic ruptures that amplify uncertainty. In these years ahead, the resilience of importing nations will depend both on origin of their crude and on how effectively they manage the political and financial currents surrounding every barrel of oil. Okay, now this much is in. I think now this much is clear now. So environment. Okay, so this is important. Let us try to understand few things, not everything. Okay. So branded the COP of implementation, COP 30, the 30th session of the United Nations Climate Change Conference held in Belém, Brazil in November 2025 marked a decisive shift in how adaptation is understood, not as an abstract promise of resilience, but as a measurable, countable discipline grounded in systems that function under stress. At the center of this shift is water moving from margins of infrastructure planning to the core of climate survival. For the first time, global adaptation indicators integrate water, sanitation, and hygiene into climate accountability, reshaping the water food climate nexus with implications for all countries, including India. Climate change feels through water. Climate change is experienced most viscerally through water. Floods submerge cities, droughts hollow out rural economies, glacial melt destabilizes Himalayan river systems, saline intrusion contaminates coastal aquifers, and erratic monsoons disrupt food security. I think not very much important. So we'll stop here because not much things are to be discussed today. Okay, why is the US investigating India? This is important. Okay, but this discussion we will do in a separate video lecture. Okay, if at all we will get some time, or you can otherwise if there is a no video lecture you can just read this. Okay, just take a screenshot of this and read on your own. Okay, so I think just the gist, let us see the gist. So the US has launched two investigations under Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 against India and other economies to examine practices that may be unreasonable or discriminatory and burden or restrict US commerce. One probe examines whether countries, including India, are using excess manufacturing capacity to export to the US in a manner that hurts American businesses, while another looks at whether countries have taken sufficient steps to prohibit imports of goods produced with forced labor. Okay, so thank you so much.